as we go. But
General government meeting is in
see
order.
if there's.
If you guys want to talk to you, maybe step out or,
Listen here.
all right. For a motion to approve the agenda,
The motion.
any discussion? Move a few things around.
We're a closed session in the beginning,
If we need one, or Malia's gonna give us.
or if we don't even need it, right?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. How about the minutes of our December 9th meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Sure, I'll second it.
Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair, I did know, I believe I had an email or something from Ruck that he was gonna be on WebEx. Is he on? Want to make sure he can get on.
Yeah, there is. Supervisor Ruck, is that you calling in? Caller on the phone, can you identify yourself? Caller, can you identify yourself?
Yeah, hey Chad, this is Tim Anderson.
He's not on. I'll watch.
All right, I think we moved on the minutes. If anyone has any conflict of interest, any matters, let us know. Any public comments? Any supervisors here not seated as committee members? Have any information for us? Malia, we're gonna want to give a closed session, or you?
I don't, unless you have specific questions that need a closed session, I can just update the committee that yesterday, Mr. Loso and I had a conversation with Rory O'Sullivan, the attorney that drafted the demand letter from the Fair Society, Fair Board. And we asked the very specific question that the county board asked us to ask, specifically whether there was any way of going forward and maintaining some type of partnership with the fair in the county. He actually indicated that he wasn't sure of the answer, but he would reach out to his client. He got most of his information from Max Newhouse, the other attorney, not directly from the Fair Society. He did indicate he would try to have an answer to us before the county board meeting next week.
Yep.
That's it.
All right, thanks for staying around.
Yeah, all right.
All right, we're gonna review, and if there are any recommendations, revisions to the rules of order associated with the general government committee. Seen somebody will make some changes. Self-policy, or is that something different?
Personnel, that's farther on down. Well. Oh, so we're on.
Go ahead.
I have a question. Are we going to be getting like a markup tab here, or the whole county board is going to have to approve?
I think the process, since we don't really have a written process to this, is we will take the comments from each of the committees and have a or a markup or suggestions, so that at the March meetings, folks can look at it, discuss it, if they want, and then make recommendations. then that will be presented to the new committee.
I guess another question I have is, I guess to me, I thought, I was a little surprised that the old board, so to speak, is looking at rules of order.
Only recommendations for them to look at. Not changing it.
These are just recommendations for the next.
Yeah,
board.
ideas that
We're not
they
gonna-
might not think of that we thought of or had an issue with during our term that we felt. And you read off, executive, you read off some of the ideas that have come in.
Right. And for this group, a lot of house cleaning. So lime quarry, we don't own anymore. Parks and trails being shifted from environmental services to public safety, public works, because most divisions doing that work. However, environmental services will maintain the planning aspect of parks and trails because that's what their expertise is in. Let's see, where did I put my page?
This right now is an opportunity for this committee and anyone on it. If you have any ideas, recommendations for the next. And they'll compile them all. So we're not gonna vote on anything, just gonna send them to the next board that they consider.
One of the other ones, Chair, was a couple of years ago when that land, or a year ago, when the Environmental Services Committee was subdividing the land and selling the country dam. We kind of had questions about what is one committee without it going to the board, or, right, Kim? Yep, something like that. So it was to review that policy too, that if we're land acquisitions or land sales, that it's going to go before the general government committee also,
In the planning,
and the planning committee.
it would be number 8 under, or under the general government committee. That both committees see that, so it isn't.
And whether it should go to the whole county board, or if it's just in one committee or two committees, I just think that's another thing the board should talk about next term.
They wanna get it. By five members of the county board.
5 members makes the decision. Yep.
Versus the running in front of 2 committees.
Right.
And then if there's issues, someone could.
Yep.
Take it up the ladder first.
Right.
That's Vince's, one of his things too, is to recommend.
Just administrator makes a recommendation.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll see, everyone will see the recommendations coming from all the committees once they compile. Just our chances, anyone here have a recommendation, rules of order that we wanna
The one.
send? Yep. You have one?
Just a comment on the last item you were talking about, the sale of land and how that works. That language is actually in the financial policy that's being cleaned up now for revision on what committee it goes to and goes to the full board. It's stating that and how that works out. So that is in the financial policy that's being cleaned.
So it's in
Red
both
line.
places. Obvious.
That works.
Mike, do you have any recommendations for the next board?
Nope.
Got it. Executive order. All right. You have more committees that's got to get through yet?
I think that was the last one.
And you'll compile them and everybody will get a copy.
Yeah, and it's some of them are, well, recommendations from a committee, others were a suggestion by one committee member and so on. So I think what we'll do is probably kind of present a summary of facts so that the board, they choose to discuss it, can do that. Otherwise, we can just say, here are some recommended questions to consider as a new board in April.
All right, we got a resolution 02-22.
What is that? Oh, yeah.
Something about $8 million.
So this is the formal note. If you all recall, in December, you got the formal note for the refinancing. In December, we also did a resolution of intent to borrow, a new borrowing. Just as a rehash, we had to do the refinancing in 2021. The new debt has to be in 2022 because of banking regulations and time spans. So this is the new note with the formal terms in them. It is the 2.1%. We are allowed to draw 12 times, monthly, 12 times, beginning February 2022, ending January 31st, 2023. At that time, the note closes and the debt is fixed however much we've drawn. We do one initial draw in February. That initial draw, the administrators got it set at the $414,071. It draws the amount that we've paid Wald and LHP so far for the project. We'll draw that in February. And then based on what comes in, what bills Mo gets in and that kind of stuff, we will only draw what we need to pay the invoices that are due at that time, so that you aren't paying interest until you actually need the money. And then we'll only draw up to either the cost of the project or what the board authorizes as the maximum to borrow. But this note allows for those terms, 2.1%, 12 draws up to 8.2 million. The draws between February 1st, 2022 and January 31st, 2023. Debt payments begin in February of 2023 on the new debt, and the total debt payment for the new debt and the existing debt we just refinanced will not exceed the present debt payment ceiling of $2.4 million.
Any discussion?
Question, probably for Chad, but with the, I guess it's both the repayment amounts, but the draw amounts. You describe roughly how those amounts like that at this point in time, sort of crystal ball you're using for that.
So, they're predicted draw amounts. Which page you on,
I'm
Mr.
looking at page of the packet, page 72.
Hold on, let me flip this. We're at what line on 72, Mr.?
Right at the top of the page.
Those are not the draw amounts. That is the present, that is the estimated debt payment amount each year if you were to draw the full $8.2 million.
See, we're pledging that we'll have tax revenue sufficient to cover those amounts. How are these amounts?
Our PMA financial people design those amounts based on our acceptable debt burden and what we said we don't want debt to exceed this. If we were to borrow this maximum amount, this is, so they base it on the repayment terms and they spread it over the 10-year period.
What was the ceiling if we were using
2.4 million.
1 year?
Yes, sir. I think that's been our ceiling since I want to say like 2013 or something like that.
I think it was higher up until.
Well, we were making 2.8 million in debt payments, but we don't levy for debt more than 2.4 million. What we were doing is 2.4 million in debt levy, and we were paying the remainder 400,000 out of typical levy until 2019 when we didn't have enough regular levy and the debt had dropped anyway to 2.4. So now we're trying to keep the debt at 2.4. I believe 2019 is when they had to.
Sorry, one question. So it does talk about the amount of money, you're basically got a line of credit. It says you can use it for this project, and it says at board approval, you can use it for work across the road, right?
Yes, sir.
Is there another document at some point that we know, that's maybe the bids? You know, and I know we give you staff a lot of discretion on, oh, that's a job cost or not a job cost. I don't want to micromanage that. But how do we know that, hey, that really is a job cost? You know, because sometimes, or change orders, you know, so let's just say we got 8.2 million and you're using the money and it's like, oh, you know what, we could kind of slide that into that project right now. Right? Everyone does it. I do it at home. I do it with my own jobs. How do we know, and how does the board know that scope of work? I know we're not going to buy a new dump truck just because we're doing the project, right? Because we need a new dump truck. But how do we know that the money we're borrowing is purely going for this project? That's on the piece of paper, that's on the plan that we all sign off on at some point. This is what we're doing. We don't do it in this note, right? Because this is, but we talk a little bit about it in this note. Any comments about that?
It would generally, Mo, who's working with LHB, and it has to get approved, correct me if I'm wrong, through finance and me for anything over a certain amount. And
What's that amount?
Well, I mean, by policy, it would be 50 if it was a contract, like a standalone order or something.
What was that? I couldn't hear.
So if it were like, if there were a invoice for painting or a contract for painting and it exceeded 50,000, then that would have to come up to the administrator for approval.
If it exceeded 50,
Right.
so we could have a budget of a job of X. You could have a change order during the scope of the work of 49. That just gets approved by Mo.
Be within the scope of authority of.
Scope of work. Now, if it's 150, I'm just going back to when we did the highway shop. That's the only history I have, is we had a major change order that went through the system and no one knew it. And I just, again, I'm not about saying, no, we're not going to approve it. I just would like to know that up front, that there's substantial change orders. And I just didn't know what the threshold is when you notify the board of these costs. Does it go through general government where you give general government update on budgets and where we're going? Or is there a trigger where the administrator says it's over 50, I'm going to bring it to the board and get the board to approve it?
So if it's a budgeted project, then the administrator, by policy, any contract exceeding $50,000, the administrator has to approve and sign off on. As far as what the administrator brings to the board, if it's budgeted, it's either within the discretion of the administrator, or if the board directs and says, administrator, for this project, we want to know about
I'm
anything
talking about
about.
unbudgeted, anticipated unbudgeted amounts. How do we handle that?
You know, going through the highway project and that learning curve and how
Yeah.
that goes. And the intent would be as naturally we have ongoing construction meetings, would have a running list of any change order, whether that change order is $50 or $1,000. Just for transparency, so the committee can see, the board can see what's being done on the project.
Sure.
You know, so it's tied to the work divisions within that project. And say the reason for the change order, change of door hardware, change of space, or change of availability of a project that was spec that we couldn't get in, something like that. So there'd be a running update for general government. If the change order is substantial, then I would feel more comfortable bringing that to a special meeting of general government, so that you guys are aware of the problem that we had, or the issue.
And what is substantial? That's what I'm trying to figure out. What would be considered substantial?
Substantial would probably be if we, you guys could set that if you wanted to. 50,000 would be substantial to me. I mean, 25,000 is a large change order, because on a project this large, several, $25,000 change orders, $250,000, so it adds up fast.
Yeah.
I would be more comfortable bringing those types back to the committee right away to inform me of why they are there.
But we wouldn't make that in this document. That's just gonna be, we're gonna do that somewhere else, not on this.
Right, that'd be, me, that's the committee holding us responsible and making sure that you guys are involved.
Gotcha. Pretty easy to spend 10 grand, but yeah, I would be comfortable that maybe in a project like this, whatever the total bid was, you know, when all your bids are in, and you guys say this is our construction project, whatever that number is, that, yeah, if we had a change order, like anything over, I'd say between 25 and 50, that, you know, whatever that number is, if we got a policy of 50, I'd be fine with 50 even. You know, that, right? Because I think the sand thing was 100 and some thousand, maybe, or 150 all said.
That is
it up.
120, yeah,
120.
120, yeah.
You know, that to me is very substantial. And, you know, even if you're going into your contingency fund, you know, it's like, okay, what did someone miss? It's more for me that.
Right.
What did someone miss in the bidding process? Staff says, hey, we decided we're gonna tear out another wall. We found problems with this. We gotta dig in farther. I don't want to hold up a project either though, because you gotta run it through a committee.
Right.
You know.
But it
so-
may be something with, we declare the policy that if it's over a certain amount, it has to come through myself. And then what I can do is, if we have a committee meeting coming up, yes, if it's time sensitive, you know, I could at least call the chairman and say, what, you know, do you want to call a special meeting, a special conference call, or whatever? We'd have to give notice and those types of things. But, or, you know, it may be something I could, I'm just trying to envision what it might be, but if it was
So
something,
it's gonna come out of left field and you're gonna
Right.
get a call one day and say, hey, we got a problem.
right,
In future agenda,
pardon?
It could be, yeah.
maybe a future agenda item.
It could be, I mean, just as long as then we're ready when we get ready to sign the project and fund it and you approve the bids, maybe at that point, we could have something a little bit anticipated what that could be.
Right.
Be fine with that too.
All right, we could actually use a motion then to move this on, either with the recommendation, without, however, makes the motion. Choose.
Make a motion to approve resolution 0222 with the recommendation to approve it to the recommendation to
Second. Keep moving. Any more discussion? Resolution -20. Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have resolution 0322. Reading this one or?
That was Mr. Nelson's recommendation, and I know he worked with Malia, I believe, to design that. I'll
Yeah,
let-
so that came out of, after sitting through again another couple years of the sheriff's deal. We're negotiating pay and full discussion, everyone gets paid the same. I did talk to each director in the county too, and talked to Administrator Malia about this, that this would just be an idea. And I know counties are working on it. We're having a problem retaining. Chad can I talked to Chad about this too. And to at least just make a recommendation that staff looks at this next year before next year's budget. Make some recommendations if this is something we want to do or not, or if there's some value to it, because we're losing employees to the private sector. And we're trying to get employees here. And it was just an idea is how do you reward the employees that are really going to move up the ladder and keep them here and bring them in is what it's about in a nutshell. That's all it is.
And just so you know, we will start by looking at what other counties that have taken on this project have done, some of what they've experimented with or doing, what they've learned. I can tell you, coming from the private sector, I mean, I'm guessing 90% of private sector of any corporations do this, something along these lines. We, being government, having a culture and a tradition, doing it a certain way, it will probably start out in small steps. But I think it's a good thing to recognize those who go above and beyond. Not that every employee isn't important, they all are. But there is some opportunity to kind of differentiate or provide some incentive for people to try and always improve their performance.
Have a comment. I know a lot of places are going to this, and I mean, I'm fine with it. I don't have a problem with it. Kind of the flip side of that a little bit is when employees join a union, they kind of give up some of the things by being in a union. They kind of give up the extra. Where you're saying everybody gets paid the same or whatever. That's just part of being in a union for them as well. By being in a union.
That's, can someone explain to us how many employees of the county are in a union and how many are not?
We have 540 employees and 30 are in a union.
30?
Yeah, only sworn law enforcement. So,
Used to be all,
They used to be, yeah.
All non-management, right?
you know.
Yep.
All right, let's get a motion on this so we can keep it moving forward. County board.
Make a motion over to the county.
Any more discussion on resolution 3-22? And that will lead us to a discussion regarding supervisor and committee members' compensation rate. Commencing the full.
Mr. Ruck, I'll email this to you.
This is a survey. I think Lisa,
Actually,
Yeah.
it came from the Wisconsin HR.
right, okay, Wisconsin HR Association. It's a voluntary survey, I think, to say how are supervisors compensated. Safe to say, everybody's all over the board. It's a lot of different things. You can see how Polk compares. What I did was look at, what counties are similar in size. For example, Barron is similar to us. But you have different levels of compensation for county board chairs, or vice chairs, and then county boards. Some give a salary to county board members, some give nothing to county board members, but they might get a per diem when they attend meetings. The metro areas are certainly different in a lot of cases. But this is something for supervisors to contemplate now and make this decision so that future boards, when they are sworn in, before they get sworn in, they know exactly what their compensation will be. So if you thought about this or have any recommendations, you can look at this. I don't think a decision is being made today, correct? But rather it's a discussion and then considerations. And I think next month you'll want to make a recommendation if you have any changes.
Or if there's particular information that you want us to try to get more detail on. It's a fairly detailed survey, but I don't know if maybe there's something missing.
I got one comment here about pay for a county board chair. I'm flexible with my work schedule that I can do the job, right? But I do take this job very serious. I probably email back and answer almost every letter, every question, phone calls. And there's no way I could do this if the vice chair, John Bonaprise, didn't do what he did. there's no possible way you'd be making a couple bucks an hour at the best. I bet you I make $1 or $2 an hour if I'm lucky at the end of the year. And fine if you're retired, probably, and you're just, hey, I don't need income. But it's going to be hard to find a chair to do this job and to put the time in that you really should put in if you have to leave work and you need the income. I don't need the income, so it's not a problem. But the role of the county board chair with his vice and his second chair and how that makeup is, I think it's very important to. That's just my only opinion about the compensation for county board chair. I'm not advocating for more money, but it would be a challenge to do this job if you weren't retired.
All right, someone wanna make any recommendations or are you okay with the compensation rates now?
Quick question, and, glancing this over, like you said, you're within Polk County, some of the larger municipalities, I think that they may make more than.
You do, yeah.
I don't know if that's worth taking a look at or not, if there's town chairs or mayors, village presidents and board members. I'm just, not that I guess I don't want to make more work and have them all surveyed, but it'd be interesting to see if they're making, I think some of them are making more than this, and I'm sure some are making less. I would think that the county officials should make more than little anybody is. I do think that experience in both realms. I just think that.
So does the committee want me to survey the villages?
In the county.
Let's see what
Dan's got a
Dan
comment.
has. What you got, Dan?
On mute.
Hold on, I'll unmute him. All right, there
Are
you
you
go.
able, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I guess my standpoint in this, I'm not able to see the spreadsheet right now to understand it even, but I can tell you that from a guy that's in a working job yet, it's really minuscule the amount that one would receive for the time that's really required to do the job right. I'm not advocating for a pay increase either. I didn't take the job based on pay, but I obviously served on a lot of other boards, some of which are volunteer and some of which are paid. And for the volume and the workload and the quite frankly the responsibility, it's pretty minimal at the county level, and that's all the input I have at this time.
Maybe we'll have the chair do a performance-based pay.
I would
could support that.
I could do that.
I'd be happy to evaluate the chairman too.
And Mr. Ruck, I did send the spreadsheet to your county email.
Yeah, so when do we have to have like recommendations? Is this something we have to do?
We set the compensation.
This
for the
committee?
next board.
For the whole board?
Oh, does the whole board do it or does,
The
Whole board. Yeah.
that's the compensation
Right.
for the next
So
board.
that'll be March.
They can't,
It'd have to be a March though.
they can't change it for that term.
For this term, but in March, we're gonna have to set the new compensation for the new board coming in.
Right.
You know,
So we gotta look.
they'll set the compensation for the next.
Gotcha.
But we did a few years ago, a major increase. Almost, I would say almost double pay of a county board member. It was fairly controversial at that time that really accept your mileage to get up here. You're doing it as a public. Anyone's doing it for the money, they're definitely wrong. So, I mean, I was opposed in what they did. I mean, especially some meetings, I mean, There was a motion to call the meeting to order, a motion to approve the agenda, and a motion to adjourn. How much business we conducted. I didn't feel we should have got paid anything for doing that, and we shouldn't have met. But it was pushed through, and we basically doubled, it used to be $60 for a county board, 40 for a committee. Now it's 100 for all, regardless of the hours you spend.
Yeah, I get it. There's, with every job, there's some people that take on more than you should. There's other people that probably don't even hardly get a phone call or pick up the phone. I just know the responsibility of the chair. Again, I'm not doing, I don't want a pay increase. I don't need the money, but you're going to eliminate people that say, I gotta be at work at 8 hours a day. Because I can tell you what, as the chair, you get called constantly to come to the county building and sign something. Constantly, you get more emails than any, as a supervisor, you get so many more emails that you have to read them. Even if you don't have to react, you have to read. I guarantee you it's 2 hours every single day being county board chair. And then it's coming to the meetings. You know, then it's coming here to talk to somebody. And my point is that if we're gonna say, hey, we're only gonna let people be county board chair that have free time, that's what you're doing. Because if you're gonna take a whole pool of people out of the community being county board chair. Because if a guy's working at Polaris or a guy's working at the lumberyard, and yet he'd like to be county, or a gal or a lady, whoever, and you want to be county board chair and throw your name in the hat, you realize if you're working, you're gonna take a cut in pay. If your work will allow you to do it, you're going to take a $10,000 cut in your pay for the hours you have to do county board chair. And that's all I wanted to make sure that, I think sometimes our pay discriminates against people doing the job because we don't pay enough to get another type of people in this job than just retired people or people that.
Why don't you make a recommendation to change it then?
I may, that's why I asked, when do I need to do that by? Today?
Well, today it's a discussion regarding supervisor committee members' compensation.
Sure.
It's probably not today, but
Probably next month.
Next month?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe next month we could, like Fran, I like that idea, is what did the city mayors get paid? What did the city elected officials get paid, right? That's what you're kind of asking
I
for.
mean, board members.
Board
and
members.
There's
Right.
a president. There's basically some.
I think that'd be interesting to see that snapshot of that.
Dan,
Yeah, I'd like to take one more shot at this one. I think the sad, hard reality of this is unless you've been in the workforce or in a position that you have the flexibility to take off, we definitely discriminate against a working guy. You couldn't take a 25-year-old young man or young woman and have them be on the county board and expect them to take a half a day PTO for every meeting that comes up or every special meeting that comes up for those draws. It's absolutely unrealistic in our workforce. And it's very disappointing to me being new to the board to look at, and I'm not being critical at all, but the age structure and the diversity of our board. You're looking at almost exclusively either a self-employed or a retirement group. And that isn't real representative of the county. And I don't know how you change it or how you fix it. But I'm personally going through a change right now where I was in charge of a lot of locations and now I'm working for a new company and I don't know what my flexibility is yet. Today I'm working through a business system. I've been employed for 35 years. So the way we do things at the county certainly sets the tone for what we can have as County Board representatives. And I think the whole process needs to be looked at. And I'm sure it's not the first time it's been talked about, but it is very, very limiting to get anybody else in outside that works on a daily basis that hasn't been around for 30 years in an organization.
All right, well, we're gonna get, so are we gonna do a survey of the?
We'll do the major
homes?
villages and cities.
Yeah, I made a note, I'll try to get a survey out by tomorrow.
All right, so we had a chance to at least discuss the compensation.
And do you guys want the survey results? You want me to try to get them out to you as soon as I get them back, so you have time to look them over, or do you want them at next meeting?
Even in our agenda packet.
Okay. I'll try to get them together.
On the website, they can pull them off there if they want them.
Try to get it out.
All right, how about a discussion of purchases falling under financial policy?
All right, under financial policy, any purchase, contract, acquisition, service provided by an employee or elected person or an entity they have a pecuniary interest in has to be reported to the General Government Committee, which has to have an open discussion on it prior to the purchase being executed. Something that's budgeted is for the 2022 budget is a remodel, customer service and space-based remodel to the community service division. The one component of that, I think the total, and I'll give you the totals, I think the total's around 75,000 or something, but, or he's got the new numbers, but one component of that is kind of the general work on it, which is Nelson Construction. That number is right at 20,000. So since it exceeds that, and since that's the chairman of the board's company, the general government committee has to be involved.
And I can give you a little background on that. We have two different projects. One on the first level down with a remodel of the mailroom downstairs, and the second project is up here in health and human services. Their lobby and renovation to establish an apartment area for families to come in and get training, and Connie can better explain what they do there. And with this process, naturally, with our purchasing policy, Rod Polk, the facilities manager, he contacted all the contractors that we work with, from tile layers, the painters, the general contractors that we work with, and we had a walkthrough back in beginning of November, October timeframe, to go through these contractors to show them what we want done. We want to move this door, we want a tile here, we have this tile here, this has to be done, add a sink here, that type of thing for both projects. And with that, we had one general contractor that showed up, and that was Nelson Construction Services. So their portion of the lobby and the renovation on this level was $23,034.80. The downstairs mailroom remodel renovation down there to paint that space was $15,108. That was a process to cover to get our bids out and what we do. The sole source, then we go through and work with Nelson Construction on this. So that's the background on it. And being that it's over 15,000 for each one of these projects, bring it to general government to be open and transparent on this, on what the process was.
Okay, very good. Anyone? Question?
You didn't have any other bids then?
Now with the general side, no.
And I'll make a comment too, because there's a conflict of interest, and I don't even do these projects anymore in our company, so it's an employee, and I don't have nothing to do with it, but just definitely want to make sure that there's that distance there, and I won't be voting on anything, and never walk through the job. I have no clue what we're actually doing.
I don't think we vote on anything. I think you just have to bring it here and.
Because we used to have it with we used to buy stuff with one of the deputies.
We used to buy ammo.
Ammo, right?
Basically, it's just, we can't enter into it until you guys have an open discussion, and you guys would have the right to say, no, you can't do it, otherwise you're proceed with it.
All right, thanks.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, let's have a discussion regarding proposed revisions to the financial and personnel.
All right, you guys had the ones posted on the web, but then Mo had a couple things that got incorporated and Supervisor O'Connell identified a couple things I missed. So this, there's a summary sheet with 13 items on it, and then in the policy, it's highlighted. The reason they're highlighted is we didn't start reviewing these. We hadn't done it several years till last year. So the red that's not highlighted is what you guys approved last year. And then what is highlighted are the 13 things for this year. And I'll put it up on the screen. And Mr. Rock, I emailed those to you as well.
Chad, is there any chance you can send that to my work email? I was planning on attending today and I don't have my county computer with me.
Yeah, I'll get it from the clerk after the meeting because I actually don't have that one.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, let me pull these up real quick.
we'll be able to see them on the screen though, correct?
He will, yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna go to. So we'll go through the financial revisions first. And like I said, you have a summary sheet there that shows them, but as you see, we revised these back in December of 2020. So what we're doing today, you guys review these final revisions, and then if you don't want any changes, I'll put together resolutions for next month. So on the first one under 1.03, we removed lime quarry under the enterprise fund since we no longer have it. Also removed lime quarry, the special provisions, since the lime quarry is no longer part of our structure. Under G, the unassigned general fund balance, the consensus of the committee and the board was to raise that from 20% to 40%. So that's reflected in here. That's reflected a couple times. This defines what the unassigned general fund balance is. And then that we have to incorporate a plan if we fall below it. And I'm just going through these, so if you guys want me to. All right, insurance. So I reworked this one. We're gonna continue to work with this, try to keep the risk management in-house and look at the cases and see if, manage that in-house between Joe and I. What I did include in here though is workers' compensation coverage shall not be waived if statutorily required. And that all workers' compensation insurance policies shall satisfy the Wisconsin statutory minimum limits. There wasn't anything in there about that. Yes, sir.
So Chad, so what does that mean in the real world now? Give me a couple examples because that's.
So here's an example of a strange one. So in partnerships, they have to have workers' compensation unless it's a partnership between spouses. And then there's no workers' comp required. And our insurance companies are comfortable if they meet the statutory limits because Wisconsin has such strict workers' comp liability laws as compared to other states that we just need the minimum statutory limits for workers.
So that's all we're gonna do is, and then you guys will make a decision. Let's say it's a bigger project or it's maybe a dangerous project, more risk. You'll write into the specs of a project that the contractor would have to have this much.
Yeah.
Or something, right?
So for example, one that would trigger that I would say, hey, Joe, let's talk about this would be the roof of the courthouse.
Gotcha.
Getting into there because you're elevated, you're on scaffolding, that kind of stuff, there's more
We're not
risk.
gonna let a guy with a little policy go in and do that work, even though the dollar amount's not very high.
Right,
Gotcha.
because there's much more substantial risk with that.
So you guys are gonna manage that directly.
Right. And if through the course of the year, it's too immersive or we'll look at that through the course of the year.
I appreciate you guys doing that very much.
Yes, sir. The other thing I clarified in here is for years, our policy has said that we're supposed to be named as an additional insured. I believe that was a mistake when the policy was written, because Joe and I have talked about that. Additional insured costs the vendor more money because they're putting their blanket over you. The intent of that was just to be listed as a certificate holder. So, when we get an insurance policy from somewhere, we just went at the bottom of certificate holder. It's a legal definition and clarification, but a pretty substantial one. We haven't actually required additional insured. We've just required certificate holder. So this is marrying practice with policy. All right. Subchapter 5.5, again, this is changing the fund balance from the 40% to the 20%, or from the 20% to the 40%. Sorry. This is the second reference to the fund balance. Mr. O'Connell, I think, caught this one. I missed this paragraph. I changed it in the top one, but missed that. And then under 1.05, as Mo mentioned, the non-tax forfeiture properties, minimum bid for public auction shifts from the buildings director to the general government committee to establish that in line with what we've been doing. And then 3.04, this is an accounting practice. So for the county, we capitalize things above 5,000. For Golden Age Manor, we capitalize greater than 1,000, just because of the enterprise fund versus government accounting. So before it wasn't reflected accurately, so I've corrected this to reflect that. Also, we do an inventory of all things greater than $500, and that's reflected. So those are the proposed changes to the financial policies. Yes, sir.
So would this be where maybe we would address this? Is it policy then to kind of clean up what we were talking about earlier about the land stuff? If we're going to be selling land, that it would, was that just rules of order? So that'd be one of my questions. And then the other question would be, is this the financial policy on approving expenditures on a construction project? Could it be in writing?
Well, I mean, that's a good point. We could put in here, there's not anything in here. We could put in here for capital projects. If you want us to work on some wording for capital projects about notification, just like we do for, well, what we just went under 5.07, that kind of notification.
I personally think it would clear it up. Then there's no, well, this, well, that, but it'd be whatever you guys would recommend to, so everyone felt good about, I know this, I can do this.
So I guess my recommendation would probably be 75,000, because that's what the RFP notification to general government is for a non-budget for an RFP is 75,000 under the code. So if the committee is comfortable with that, we can incorporate that kind of language, and it would mirror what we're informing on the RFPs as well.
I'd say whatever would be to where we wouldn't have to be thinking that it's something we got to bring up every time there's a project.
Oh, what do you think would be a workable number so it doesn't slow down?
Connell said 10 grand.
That doesn't slow down.
That's too
Process.
small.
You mean for, to come in front of the committee and stuff?
Keep a job going, to do an RFP for administration, you guys to approve and keep moving. Maybe there's some notification at the next month, here's some change orders we had to sign. But something that keeps projects rolling. But at the same point, we kind of, when a project gets broke up like it did over there, there'd be a mechanism, because the administrator on that one decided not to come to us. And, broke it up in different ways. So at just some point, it'd be nice to know that was the previous administrator.
Yeah, I know.
I want to make that clear.
No,
I think as you talk about projects, as you get, there needs to be a distinction between a $25,000 change order and a $50,000 change order. Those numbers to me resonate because in a larger scope job, you can have a lot of $25,000 change orders that can add up very fast, even if you're still within budget using owner contingency, construction contingency. That it should have listed that notification of the general government on over 25,000
Sure.
would be appropriate as notification,
Notification, then that's good.
and then $50,000
Over 50,
over 50, then approval.
But what I was,
We could kind of watch those projects not to, because then that would trigger the special meeting that you'd have to make a project move forward. And
if it was time sensitive, you have to call special meeting.
correct. And those, and depending on the change order, it is the key component that if it's something that's found, that's notification, that's one thing. And usually those change orders will go through a committee because they're required for the project. It's if it's the administrator wants to change the scope of work and add a hot tub to his office for $50,000, well, then that would need, that's a change of scope, not just something we find. So those are,
Or a bar.
those are the ones, so. But I think the notification at 25,000 makes sense, and over 50,
And the notification could be afterwards, right? If we had to make a decision on it right away, then I can say, hey, in the past month, there's been these 3 change
I
orders.
think notification's good. It's just, I just think if you get to a certain number, there should be a cap on that number that triggers.
so this section here is regarding RFPs, and there's a line in here, items in excess of 75,000 lease purchased or contracted through this process must be submitted to the general government committee for their review. We could add something specific to capital project change orders at whatever dollar value you decide. And that would be the
Doesn't
same.
really care. The dollar amount is, it's just so there's no more gray area on that.
Okay.
You guys can pick the dollar amount.
All right, so if there's no further on the financial, moving on to the personnel, there's only a few here. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Pritchard.
Going through this in preparation for the meeting, there are many references to the general government committee, board's approvals and so on, sort of in the same vein we're just talking about. And I am wondering to what extent administration is focusing on those provisions, because during the past year, I don't recall that any one of these have been touched off.
We are trying to do much better. Like, for instance, when you got 5.07 today, we're trying to, make sure that the policy gets adhered to and we bring that stuff. So that's a work in progress, but we are trying to do much better on adhering.
I think it would be helpful to have a page or two that just made reference to the provisions of the code that did require a notification.
You guys just want a summary sheet for your committee for like the members?
That's what I was thinking of.
I can put that together, just a summary. That's not a problem. Absolutely. All right. Personnel. Again, you'll see the highlighted.
I don't know if the other supervisor had any.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Rock, do you have anything? Okay. Personnel, under duties, added equity and inclusion, the diversity, which was already in there. Strategically, DEI is of extreme importance to keeping a workforce and keeping a clear workforce, tapping into resources and all. Division director, adding the definition of that. Department heads, again, that's bringing under the division model, department heads with their respective division heads so that that line is clear. Defining standalone departments. I did not list the standalone departments because they're things like UW Extension, the VA. There are standalone departments, but since the composition may change over time, I did a more broad stroke on that than list each individual department in there. A standalone, but defining the standalones. Or what a standalone is, rather. Just the ID badge issued by the county under J. Because HR authorizes the ID badge issuance, and then facilities issues the badge. So just change that to county. Longevity pay is actually everybody who's benefit eligible. So any role that's benefit eligible is entitled to longevity pay. And that's been a practice, but we're putting in a policy there just to clarify. Yes, ma'am.
How many hours is benefit?
30. Before we had a lower, we had 24 hour, we had these different tiers, but we actually phased them. Also, we have some people that are part-time that because the number of hours they work, they become benefit eligible. So then Mo caught this one, medical examinations. We do a medical examination. It's actually by a provider picked by the county and not by the employee. So that clarified that, struck that. And this added the division director, before it was department heads could establish a limited term position if no one was available in an emergency situation. Added the division director and then specified that standalone department heads could still establish an LTE in an emergency situation. That, an example would be COVID, say there was a massive surge and Vince was gone, I was gone, and Tanya needed to bring on 6 more disease investigators. Then Tanya would bring them on, and then she'd say, hey, we had funding, this is what I did. But that's the kind of example. Or if the sheriff had some kind of emergent situation where he had to, deputize and put people into paid status. And that's the last thing on that one.
All right, so these are proposed revisions.
Yeah, and unless I'll add wording for what was brought up with the capital projects. If you guys are good with it, we'll prepare resolutions for next month for the board, for the committee to report.
All right, what's going on with broadband?
Oh. Yeah. Again, this is a discussion. I don't believe you have this. But as you know, it's been a county priority. It's smooth on top, a lot of action on the other side. So we've actually been doing some investigating and some work on this to try and uncover what's the best way to impact broadband in Polk County. So today I'm giving you information, thought being that by next month, if this committee or the board thinks this warrants action, then I'll have a resolution prepared for the March meeting. And I'll get into why doing that. History situation. Okay, as you recall, it's been almost 3 years ago now, maybe 4, the Board of Supervisors recognized the importance of broadband to the economic development, the education, and so on of our students here in the county. It's kind of the wave of the future, and once it's there, it will be used, that technology going forward. But we got approved. We were the first county to have both broadband forward and telecommuter forward designation, thanks to the effort of the board, which eased the burden of regulations for internet service providers to dig, to get into places. We also offered them a $1,000 match for every grant they were awarded from the PSC Commission. And that worked very well. If you recall, we had a series of a couple of years there where we were getting grants like this into our county. The money was flowing into the county and we were getting some fiber optic cable throughout. Lately, it's dried up. Our internet service providers are not getting rewarded the grants. We dug into that to find out why, and you'll see why here in a moment. The next slide. Okay. Remember that 2 years ago, this board made broadband a top priority, one of the top priorities of the county, and why. And this is what amazes me is how many different ways it affects not just internet. It's not just going on and checking your Facebook or whatever. It's going to be more and more involved in education. Students in the school systems, college educations, remote learning, training, those types of things. It provides business and job opportunities. Businesses won't locate here if they don't have access to the high-speed internet where they have the upload and download capabilities necessary to do their job effectively. Entices families and workers. I got an article sent to me that they are saying that internet or broadband adds 10% value to your home. 10%. If you go to a house and you buy it and you don't have internet, it causes major issues for those people who are moving, for example, here to work remotely. So they are now asking in advance, we need that specified. Do you have, and what is the upload and download capability? Healthcare. Nobody likes to go to the doctor, right? Well, and especially in a pandemic, because you're getting exposed. But healthcare now, we're already doing this, and into the future, more people are going to be doing telemedicine. You can do it from your home. You can't do that unless you have that internet capability and that bandwidth to do it. And emergency communications. So that's, broadband is going to have a positive impact on this county. We'll have a negative impact if we don't have it. Okay, so as of late, we contracted with, and some of you know this person, Cliff Albertson, with Badger Communications. He is one of the leading experts in broadband in the state. He was also one of the leading experts in telecommunications decades ago. But he has really become an area, he proposed to us the potential of Polk County having 3 strong internet service providers in the county, plus others that dip into our county. As you know, when you have CenturyLink and you have some of these big firms, they don't invest in rural counties. The fact that we had Lakeland, Amory Tel, NextGen, also got StarWire, gives us an advantage if we take advantage of it. So our task with him was to identify the opportunities here in this county to improve broadband. And it's important that we get on this because you've got all this attention focused on broadband, federal government and the state government. Feds aren't coming through like we thought, but the bottom line is everybody's jumping into this market. If we don't act now, there's going to be, according to the experts, a backlog in materials like fiber optic cable, time, work experience. The state is coming through and increasing the amount of funds that are available for these PSC grants. Last time we didn't get any, or if we did, it was a minor. The other thing, though, is it's in addition to expanding our infrastructure, make this successful, we have to do other things. We have to educate people in our county on the uses and the opportunities it presents. Because I'm one of those. I was one of the lucky ones where they brought broadband to my house and said, no charge, we're just doing it, we're running by here. A few years ago. They said, no charge. If you want it, you take it. If you don't worry about it. And I said, well, why do I need it? I get my internet fine. Well, what I'm learning is there are so many more uses now. And to work remotely, to upload, to send, to do video conferences and so on at your home, you're going to have to have that. Once we educate folks on how it is used or can be used now, how it's going to be needed into the future, more people will say, yeah, I guess it's worth paying that extra $25, $30 to get higher speed. And also, is there a way we can support those who can't afford that? They deserve it too if we can figure out a way to do it. So what we want to do is support actions. What these things can do will support the idea of increasing availability and demand. Because if you don't have demand, nobody will use it, right? One of the tasks of Cliff and the work he did was to draw a map. Now, in the green, Chad or Malia, do you see, did I bring those maps down here?
You didn't.
It's not that it matters because you can see up here the result. This is not a door-to-door or a street-to-street analysis. But when you looked at our county, the portions in the green is where there are what you might call the skeleton of broadband. And that whether it be broadband or they have other high-speed capabilities, Polk County has got some pretty good areas. That's the green. The white hash marks, for example, Amorytel and some of those have projects now where they are actually kind of what you would say edging out to new areas. So they might run down, let's say County Road 8, but then that area is like, well, we didn't go down this road or this road. We're going to go down there and get those houses. So they are expanding in those areas. The yellow is where we have significant gaps. So you look at it, it's Osceola Farmington area. It's up by the Frederick area and up in these areas. And also out on the western portion, Turtle Lake. The purple lines on here are school districts. So you can see how many school districts are affected by the low internet capability. So this first strategy was, how can we get, if those are our prioritized areas, how can we expand, how can we get internet service providers into that area? Because they needed, some could say the most, more people would be affected. Next, potential actions. Teamwork is key. Why do I say that? Internet service providers were coming to me saying, boy, county, you got ARPA money, give us some. Commit, give us more. My reaction was, hey, you're a private business. You don't come in and just say, give me taxpayer money. We have to partner in this. In working with them, though, what I've learned is one of the primary reasons we have not been getting PSC grants of late, because the PSC in their application process has prioritized commitment from multiple parties, teamwork. Polk County was one of the first ones to give $1,000 match and to be broadband forward and telecommuter forward, and that meant a lot. Now that doesn't mean anything because everybody's doing that and they're doing more. So by the scoring in those grants, if we are committing a larger number and saying we are partnering, not only in possibly a matching grant to get into those yellow areas, but if we are also teaming up with schools, with businesses, with public health, and in educating people on how to use broadband, how to get telemedicine, those types of things, that scores the points much higher. And our internet service providers will get those grants and will move forward with these very expensive projects. So in addition to helping those folks get more grants, we're working now. I've been on a call with Cliff and with the University of Wisconsin Extension, with the PSC office, and they are very impressed by the fact that we're discussing an educational campaign. How do we get the word out on the value and how to use broadband? And those types of things make a difference because now they're talking about Polk County. Now when we submit our application, You know, it's funny how many people are now sending me notes saying, hey, here you guys are working on this. And so the word is out there. The other thing we can think about too is how do we support household access to broadband? Most cases now, I was lucky. Most cases now, they'll run the fiber optic cable down the road, but if you want it to your house, you got to pay to take it there. Is there a way for us to provide an incentive? $300, $400. You know how it is if my wife goes into the store and says, hey, I'm looking at those shoes. I don't need shoes, but if they're on sale, hey, they're on sale. I got to get these. A lot of people will say, if I could better afford that, I will hook up. That's one option. The other one, the federal government provides people who are financially in need. They have to apply if they meet the criteria. Last year, they were getting $50 a month paid for on their bill. They're doing it again this year, but they've reduced it to $30. I didn't even know about that. But now I think if we can help educate the public that this is available, one option maybe is for 1 year to supplement that federal payment. So if they applied for federal funds and they got that $30 a month, maybe they get an additional $20 from Polk County for a year or something like that. That way to ensure people they can get it. And it's like anything else. If we think if they get it and start using it, seeing the benefits of it, they will keep it. They will find that, oh, maybe this is more important than hanging out at the coffee shop or whatever it is. So my approach, and our approach here on the staff is how can we drive a team approach by working with groups and organizations in the county as well as the internet service providers so that one, they get their application submitted and it wins the dollars. And two, how do we get the public engaged in this and start recognize the importance and subscribe? What happens when you subscribe? If they run a mile of cable down a road and there are 20 houses there, you may get 3 or 4 or 5 houses sign up immediately. That's not great. But if you got 10 houses to sign up immediately, that internet service provider is going to say, all right, this is going to work out for us in the long run. Let's go down this street. So we're trying to get more people aware of this so that they want it, they'll get it sooner rather than later. Remember, down the road, the supply of these things could be dragged out a little bit. Next slide. Okay. Here's a summary. Is this the time for the county to step up in its commitment to support expansion? By showing some level of commitment to matching what the internet service providers are going to do, we think they'll get more money and hence they will do it. If you recall, for competitive reasons, I don't know what I can say, one of those yellow areas on the map had a grant application to go into that area and cover most of it. But it's a very expensive task. They didn't get the grant, so they didn't do it. They're going to apply again. I think it's by the end of March, I think is the deadline, or mid-March. And if they can get the grant, they will go into that area. So automatically, a lot of that yellow will become green. So we need to show, my suggestion is does the county want to show commitment, provide a larger match than $1,000? It'd be significant. And also, we will continue to educate the public, develop strategies to support more users to use it. Going back to the priority, if we do this, this is something that we said, these are things that will make a difference in our county now and into the future. And I think that's why broadband especially was put on there. I'll show you in summary what I'm talking about. We used to get grants, now we don't. Of the 38 awarded grants, or 38 awarded grants last time, And again, these, you know, there were like 80 grants awarded, but they had a bias last time to co-op situations and nonprofit organizations. So it kind of limited access to it. But of the 38 grants awarded, or 38 had significant county matches. The average project cost of these 38 was 2.8 million, a little over that. That's the average across the state. The average county contribution of those counties that got, or those companies that got the grants, the county contribution was 290,000 per grant. The percent of match that a county provided was 11%. The highest of the matching funds was 25%. So the counties, some counties took their ARPA funds, put their money where their mouth is, and said, we're in desperate need of broadband. How are we going to do this? And they committed, there were counties that committed close to all of their ARPA funds to this type of project. So, you know, in a way, I wanted to present this to you to say we have an opportunity in front of us. If you think it's of interest, I will put together with my staff the proposal of a resolution that might, much like we did with the original broadband forward resolution, say if a company gets awarded a grant, we will match up to 10% up to a certain amount. And we can put other restrictions, requirements in there. We'll work out those details over the next month. But I think what you'll see is those gold areas on that map will get filled in quickly. Because everybody now is, you know, competition is a good thing. These 5 internet service providers that we hosted here in a meeting to say, you know, here's what we're thinking. What are you guys doing? How can we work together? They all came up to me afterwards and said, we're trying to get into that area. We want to do this area. You're going to see them jump into those areas for competitive reasons, but they can't do it, they say, because of the expense. And so they're waiting for these grant money. So it's an option. Option for ARPA funds. I don't have exact numbers now. And if you just wanted my opinion, I would say to make this thing really work, we're probably talking, I'm thinking 1.5 to 2 million, probably more like 2 million.
Question I have is, one is the ARPA funds, you only got a certain definite time. So, you know, knowing how that rolls out, I like the idea of partnershiping with schools, businesses, you know, just think of it as a business or someone that has employees that stay at home. I'd rather see us partner through that mechanism than hand out money to someone that says, I can't afford it.
Okay.
You know, not that I don't want to help the people, but I'd like to help them in a different way. I'd rather help them get a job or a better job than to give them money. Right? That's
the hardest thing of this is directly to consumers. How do we?
Yeah, I would be concerned with that and
Manage
managing that and then trying to figure out, okay, did they make their monthly, they get their $20? Did they keep the service? Did they get rid of the service? I think that would be a big undertaking. But if we could help communities, even partnering with townships, municipalities, partnering with the businesses and the communities that have the funds to help make it a bigger project.
Yeah, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the township of Osceola,
It's a town.
township that has said to these ISPs, and what, you know, I kind of hope we do, is they're saying in their letter of support to the PSC, town of Osceola will provide this much money to support.
See, I like that. If a town says, hey, we'll put an X amount of dollars into a project too, and whether it's 5,000, 1,000, 50 grand, whatever it is, that the county would work with the township.
Yeah, and that scores high. Every
Right.
time you do that, more points go up.
And I think too, and having a partnership with the business community to, you know, as a business and you know, that there would be an opportunity as a business to have an employee work at home there'd be some value with that in a business and some partnerships there. And I don't know exactly how it would work out, but
The thing I'll say too, though, is I think of this more as a long-term investment because this is, again, you're talking about a non-techie here. Once you get the fiber optic cable in the ground, it's not like a new technology is going to come and take it away, at least in the long term, because as I understand it, once that cable is there, it's just a matter of changing a few things here. And if now you're trying to get a gig up and a gig down, if you need 10 gigs up and 10 gigs down, it's a matter of changing the color of the light. You know, it's something that can be done into the future. And that's why the federal government, the state government is really pushing this, like the telephone. Want everybody to have it. Everybody has to have telephone, right? That's what we did in the rural America. Now they're doing that for broadband. So, the other thing too is once you do this, once we get the whole county covered in that green where the skeleton is there, that's when start going after the neighborhood. What I found is internet service providers respond very positively to opportunities when they are presented from a neighborhood, from an area. You call and complain, I want internet, very easy to blow you off. They get organized and you get a school district behind you, or you get 22 homes, 4 businesses, and, you know, something, commuter or lake person. Then they go, oh, do we have your commitment that a lot of you will sign up? Then they figure out a way to work into it. So, we look pretty good as a county. We know we're not there in some of our key areas, need it. We got an opportunity right now to kind of give this a boost.
Question, so the number that you threw out there, not being a techie or anything, percentage-wise, what would that be
Yeah.
matching?
And I'm, you know, they said the average one last time was 11%. I'm looking at that 10 to 12% range up to a certain amount. So let's say a company says, we're going to do all of Osceola, all of Farmington, it's going to be a $5 million thing. Well, I would probably think we'd want to level off to say the maximum amount for any specific project might be 300,000 or something like that, up to 10%. That's what I'm thinking.
because when you talk like that too, you know, you have the rural community where, yeah, the rural communities, some of the ag, the farmers out there. The drive is going to be to go to Osceola, Amory, or to a municipality where they get 1,000 right now.
Yeah.
And how do you as a county, or how do we as a county make it fair?
Yeah.
So Clam Falls needs internet, but it's only going to feed 50 people. And, you know, it's going to be a lot of dollars for Clam Falls versus a lot of dollars. How do you make that work?
It's interesting. Is Clam Falls is kind of in the green. Now we know there are a lot of houses out there that don't have it, but they've got pockets of it throughout the area, and it's easier for a company to expand them. The other thing that's interesting is we know the bigger ones, Northwest Communications, Lakeland, you know, here that are local. Up in that area, you've got Starwire, 2-person show, but they are the ones that started into that Clam Falls area. They're one of the companies that's saying, we're planning on going into, you know, north of Frederick there, those towns. We're trying to get in there. We need a little help.
Like, for an example, I had an employee that wanted to sell his house. He wants to stay working for us. He wanted to move. He lived down 46. I think here just south of Balsam Lake, a few miles on a state road. I just thought there would have been internet down there. He couldn't sell his house. It took him months and months to sell his house because he didn't have high-speed internet. He had whatever he had there.
Yeah.
So even though you got an area that's colored green, like you're saying, there's a whole bunch of people in the community that don't have it.
And next month, I will be bringing Cliff. My plan is to bring Cliff Albertson into that meeting, and he knows all this more than anybody. But, just thinking from a business standpoint, once you're in a certain area, it's easier to expand out from that. And sure, the big priorities are going to be those.
But
Big ticket
but the
items.
question is would you be able to leverage these dollars? So let's just say the Lakelands of the world say, hey, I know I can make money expanding here, but would we have enough skin in the game? If we're gonna put skin in the game, I would think we'd want leverage to say, you're also gonna have to go north, south, and west and east of here, X amount. Then, because they're private companies, like you said, they're gonna go where they can make the money.
Yeah.
Who makes them go to the guy down 46? And if we're giving them money and the state's giving them money, are we making him go there
Well,
or not?
and Chad or somebody jump into, and this is what Cliff can answer. The goal is to have everybody have access to this by the state, by the feds. And so they do apply pressure. And in fact, when I talked to John Klatt, he's been saying to me forever, Vince, the whole county is going to be covered by broadband.
And it's possible, you got a stick in that you got a match for a grant, but as opposed to pressure, might also be enticement. So I guess what I'm saying is where we're lacking, if you looked at the Turtle Lake and Osceola Farmington areas, it's that middle mile. It's getting the fiber in the ground near the areas that's not done. And like for Osceola and Farmington, it's because it's so rocky and expensive. But then you've got the problem with what they call the last mile, and that's from that middle mile fiber that say is out on 46, getting it to the house. So maybe it's a dual band approach that the county undertakes. Maybe it's matching the grant up to a certain amount, but maybe it's coming up with some kind of incentive plan for the consumer that if it costs you $800 to run fiber from that middle mile to your house down your long driveway, bring us the receipt and we'll give you a grant for up to $300 after you do it. And by doing that, if the providers know the county is out there offering that incentive to the consumers to connect to that middle mile, maybe that's the kind of pressure you apply to the providers. Like, run it down 46 another 300 yards, and there's 6 people, and we'll help them. We'll help those people connect so their house is connected. So maybe you take 2 approaches. Maybe you have a pot of money for this and a pot of money for that. I don't know.
The amount I threw out just as a wild guess, based on types of things I'm seeing come in, I would think that if they don't get approved, we don't use it.
So where do you get this $2 million from?
I'm looking at the average grants, the number of projects. I'm looking at the number of grants that I'm hearing the internet service providers are going to apply for.
Where do you personally get the money?
Recommendation be ARPA. funds.
So you're saying this money, you can get all this grant money pushed out in the community by 2026?
Oh, yeah, it'll be out by next year.
All this money would be shoved out to projects that would be shovel ready in a year from now?
That would be my goal.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, when these companies apply for these grants, like the next round closes March 17th, they have to have their whole design, engineering, all that done and ready to go if they're awarded the grant by the feds.
They are waiting for us,
And
right?
have you seen the projects designed that they would meet some criteria that we would want?
I've seen here's where we will go.
Okay,
And-
I've seen those maps.
Yeah, when they saw this map, they kind of smirked and smiled. And of course, they're sitting there looking at each other because antitrust, they can't say anything. Now, since then, they've come to me and said, this is where our plan is to go, and so we're drawing over that map, how it's going to cover all that.
So what's your projected, if the county put $2 million, how many people would benefit from that 2 million? That would be a question I would want to benefit.
Yeah, good question. And
You don't know
what?
that yet.
Not off the top of my head, but when they apply for the grants, they give that information
I
to
understand.
the PSC. They'll say, we've got 620 people in this area, 26 businesses.
It'd be nice, it'd be, for me to vote on something like that, I'd want to know the benefit.
Well,
Than just this
how
flight.
many people live in Osceola and Farmington?
I don't know how many,
Yeah.
oh, Dan's trying to talk.
You're on mute.
You're okay, Dan?
Sorry about that.
You have a question?
No, I'm good.
He was just yelling at someone coming in his door, right?
Yeah.
So as I'm looking at this, I was surprised to see how yellow this southern corner of the county was, given that value-wise, equalized value and assessed value and net new construction and all of those things, this is the largest growing area of the county. And so I'm surprised people are kind of coming there anyway, even though this isn't real flushed out for them.
And I get calls, complaints about the fact that they, either realtors saying, I can't sell a house because of this, or I didn't sell a
Yeah.
house. And I can point fingers at certain companies, the big ones, you know who
Yeah.
they are, that said, they give us lip service year after year after year, but they never invest in our county.
Same thing with this Turtle Lake area.
Yes.
And they're both, it's the same company.
So now our locals are competing. So you got the small company up north. We've got Sirentel. Sirentel would apply for something that would only apply to what's in Polk County. You know, we could do that. So it's kind of an exciting time. When Cliff looked at it and did the map, he says, my God, he goes, I realize Polk County may be the first county to ever to be totally covered. Now, again, not every house, but to have that skeleton in there to actually say, we're good to go. Now it's just up to our local providers to reach out. Yeah.
Questions on the green portion of the map. What speed service in the green
I
portion?
think it says down there, when he comes on.
So what,
I think do you remember what?
so the baseline is if they have 20 megabyte upstream, they have good internet service. So if it's green, it's 20 megabyte up, because if you're good at 20 megabyte up, you're gonna have really good download. You're gonna have 50, 100 down. So they look at the up, and 20 was the baseline there.
I know in one of our earlier discussions, we had looked at the federal government and some sort of a priority. Is there any information that gleaned out of your discussion?
The goal and what we feel we have to shoot for, when I say we, I mean the state, the feds, the internet experts, is 100 up and 100 down. I'm saying the right terminology there. Not a gig, but 100 up and 100 down.
Yeah, I think
That's initially.
I think it's 100 up,
I
100
was
down in
talking
5
about
years.
the money, federal money to support the broadband expansion.
Oh, will there be, well,
That was a timing issue if,
Yeah.
if, scene might be changed significantly. Was a lot of.
yeah, I don't think there's a lot of, in fact, I'm going from memory here, but the federal money that everybody thought was going to come isn't now coming for broadband. But yet we do have the ARPA funds in which they targeted broadband as one of the acceptable uses for. So they made it a priority in that way.
There is that last batch that goes out in the grants on March 17th, and that's like the last big batch.
How much ARPA money's left right now from the first batch?
Around $1 million.
About $1 million
Yeah,
still?
and then we got the second batch in May.
So again, what I hope to do, and I'll kind of present this, I'll clean it up a little bit, but to the full board quickly. But I hope to put together, unless I'm told not to, a resolution that you all can look at and review, where that will spell out actions and things we can take, and you can decide if that's what you want to do or not.
So we're going to hear from this industry expert next month.
Yes, that's my plan. And, you know, he said he's willing to do it. I just got to call him and get him.
And that's part of crafting the resolution is,
We'll work with him and we'll craft it prior to that March meeting to say things like, if you feel it's a good idea, if I go Tuesday night and everybody boos me and hisses me and so on, we won't do it. But I think it's something that we can propose. I can kind of firm up a little bit to give you an idea of what it's going to cost exactly. And I like the idea of, you know, if we just took that area down in the southwest corner, here's how many people could be affected. I mean, they'll all sign up right away. Doesn't mean every house will get it right away. But it's the kind of thing that will, you know, when I talk to the EDC guy, he's all over this. Broadband is critical now. If you don't have high-speed internet, you're not going to attract businesses or people.
And it's a two-edged sword because there's a lot of people in the county that says, when's enough enough? Can't tell you how many times I hear that. Well, let's crank out more broadband. Let's crank out more infrastructure. So we have housing coming and more businesses coming. In 10 years from now, we're going to look at Polk County and go, what happened to our little nice county? We're a suburb. And so just saying that will be, you know, it's one thing to have an initiative to get broadband to every home, existing business and people that live in the community. But I'd be a little concerned about proposing broadband to bring more people here and more business here. That will have a little more blowback.
Let's your definition of that might be different than mine. Let's call it deferred economic development, right? I mean,
I'm just
yeah.
throwing that out. I hear that from the local.
some
And,
people don't
and you
like
heard
change.
from them,
Yeah.
you hear
Some
from
people don't
them
like change.
on the phone. 75 years ago, they didn't have phones here, right? 20 years from now, this is
That's
how
what
we-
we're worried about is what we do today is going to impact, you know, so saying.
all I have.
Well, might as well stay up there, because we're having an update discussion regarding the Ports Rec Facility market study.
Okay,
Okay, I already did this, so I'll try to learn.
This is like environmental services now,
We're getting presentations.
and we're never going to be able to go to lunch.
Yeah, because even in executive, you said 10, 15 minutes, and I think you were 30 plus.
permission to ask Mr. Nelson not to ask any questions.
Well, I mean,
Oh, you shouldn't have any questions, this unless he would bring his question up.
I ain't going to ask another question, Chair.
Interest in others.
Okay. Let me just,
sit on any committees that have reviewed any of this.
this is the first.
You've ever got.
So I wouldn't call this a presentation, it's just talking points. And I will pass out the draft report on Tuesday night. But because people have asked, you know, for transparency reasons, I wanted to bring up where we're going so that we're not totally surprised. You can think about questions.
This is just flushing it out for the county board meeting. This is practice.
Okay.
Study goals. We did a study. We hired SFA for their expertise, not only in determining whether or not it would work, but how to run them, because they run a lot of these. Question is there a possibility for constructing high-quality local rec facility that would meet our local needs, would meet our board priorities, help youth, help families, so on, attracting new visitors, increase economic impact? This was when the board said, let's think beyond these 2 years or the 3 years of these priorities. Let's think 10 years in advance. What might be something to help this county be what we want it to be? This was one idea. Sports, recreation, other activities. We wanted to know what sports, what facility, type of facility, what would be the size and the cost. This is just a preliminary market demand study. Next page. What we did was we bring in stakeholders. We brought in athletic directors. We brought in city, community leaders, people that are in charge of sports associations, and so on, to look at, do they think this is something of need? Say the people that attended there, generally people were like, yeah, we could sure use that without knowing any of the details. things they said that really jumped out, sports seasons here are too long. The weather is such, it's really hard to develop a baseball team when you half the season is over before you go outside on the infield. Practice time's difficult to get. The ice hockey guys, as you can imagine, we're all over the fact we all fight over one or two ice rinks. The other thing that is important, I think, from our standpoint, do we have a positive place for kids, families, and so on to go, as well as seniors and so on to be involved in activities? Activities were analyzed. All these things were analyzed. And I'll jump to the chase a little bit. They came back with a pretty strong opinion that based on our market, based on our weather conditions and so on, that they said most of it will be indoor type activities, volleyball, basketball, baseball, softball, soccer in an indoor turf area that wouldn't be a full baseball field, so to speak, but they would have a couple of infields in there, along with some side areas where you could use for batting cages, running, exercise, other types of skill development. Thing that's not on there that I'm excited about that they said would be very popular, pickleball. That's something for us older folks to get up there and get a little exercise on. They also looked at outdoor types of stuff, the bigger project, because remember when we started, it was a very wide net. We just said this could be everything. We knew it couldn't. They looked at all these different things. The entertainment option for family was a big win. I'll say that because they look at that as something because kids, youth, families want things to do individually or as a group. Too, that's a money maker when people can come and do laser tag and those types of things. Archery, what's the golf? You get into the machine. Those are the types of things that draw people in on a regular basis. These things, not so much. The equestrian, the outdoor ATV, UTV part of it because they look at the competition, the other items in the area, and the expense of doing them and saying this would be a real challenge. Not that it can't be done, not that it shouldn't be done. That would be their recommendation. Two models, a community model and then a regional model. Difference is size. They recommend for our area the community model. It kind of goes out to a 60 and 90-minute radius to draw people to this facility for tournaments, for activities, for the facility or whatever. And that's how they, based on their experience, they can gauge what the attendance would be and how many people would come. You can see basketball with volleyball courts overlaying it, turf area, one ice rink. Even though the ice participants are not as large as all these others, but they said they are rabid demand people. They can't get enough ice time and they will use that ice rink as much as they can. It's also not just for hockey, but other things as well. 11 acres in size. We were thinking 100 to 200 acres for all these outdoor types of facilities. 37 million is the cost. That is not the cost to the county. Next considerations would be things like who's going to participate, who's going to be players, partners, and pay for this, and what will the role of the county be, some type of a partnership. The regional model is simply bigger, price tag's much higher. The challenge with that is you're going to do the regional and pay for this, you're having a lot of tournaments. Problem with having a lot of tournaments here on these sports is you've got so much competition in the cities and other areas. As you cast a wider net to get multiple tournaments coming in. They said this is a possibility. When I probed them, they said we really encourage the community. Larger. Better suits our needs, higher likelihood of success. The key is where do we choose to put it and what type of funding model do we choose? That's, we have to work that out if we choose. Next steps, variety of things. Nice thing is there's no timeline on this. This is not something we have to have done by a certain time. It's looking into the future, and it's just something that sparks the imagination of our folks, supervisors. In a month, when we finalize this draft, I'll hand out the draft Tuesday night. And it's basically what the report's going to look like. SFA will be here in March, and you can have a Q&A, so you'll have a month to
So they
look
won't
over
be here in February.
Oh, yeah, this is January. I'm sorry. This will be at the February meeting. You'll have January to February to study. Thank you. Meantime, I can continue to look at the ideas of public and private partnerships or development incentives to get businesses, groups involved, ownership, those types of things. But more importantly, I would probably spend the next month going back to my stakeholders saying, here's the interim, here's the report. What are your thoughts? What are your questions? How intense is your interest? Because this will not be something that, it's going to be a county department. This is going to be something we'll probably need some type of condition, public-private joint, where they're responsible for going out, generating the funding and the financing and so on. One option, at some point, we can do a feasibility and economic impact analysis and a pro farma. I've seen those on other facilities. They are very detailed. What I found most interesting was the economic impact analysis, where they can say, based on these assumptions and things you have here, this will be the economic impact on your community in terms of dollars, hotel rooms, hotel stays, and those types of things. So, yep, you pay money up front. You're going to have increased sales taxes on a lot of stuff. You'll have other fees and so on, but you're also getting people staying in hotel rooms. You're getting them visiting here. They can figure that out. Questions, and we'll be exploring what other types of things we need to know. Final thing on here, one option is to say, let's discontinue this. I've had some people say we shouldn't be doing this at all. Let's just get out of it. That's up to you. But you don't have to make a decision, or you can make a decision. This may be something that we talk, we discuss, we ask questions, and then maybe in February or March, we say, you know what? Let's renew this after the new board is in, and we can discuss it. So, is that all I have there, Chair?
It is.
That was fast.
Questions?
At some point, it's going to be the question of what is it going to cost the county? Furthermore, to move ahead with with the steps that you have.
Yep.
So if this, and I don't know if that's information you'll have at the board meeting or not.
The feasibility, economic impact. if we
All of
get
those things
close,
cost
that would
money,
be like
yeah.
40,000.
Yeah, what those things are. Okay.
All right, anything on our 2022 work plan?
It looks like it's in order. We'll have the resolutions for the revisions for financial and next month.
Make a motion to adjourn that, Chair.
Second it.
Those in favor?
Aye.
11:56. Carried.